Here's the seismicity you're talking about. Here's Victoria right here. I'll bet you $100 there's a reasonable size fault cutting through along there, maybe a few others, and that's why you're getting seismicity, because it's concentrated along that fault.
University of Texas San Antonio Department of Geology Assistant Professor Dr. David Young's research interests include plate tectonics and structural geology. Young says that fracking has proven profitable for the oil and gas industry.
You can get oil or gas from horizons that you would normally consider unproductive. Fracking it creates porosity and permeability, allows the hydrocarbons to flow towards your pump line.
Dr. Young says that while fracking technology is only about a decade old, quakes in Texas have been occurring for a much longer period than that.
I looked up the earthquake frequency since about the 1970s, and there's always been little earthquakes in this part of the world. And the main reason for that is that there is a series of faults that step down from the hill country.
With all of Dr. Young's research in plate tectonics, he says one thing stands clear.
So where there are faults, there's always a potential for earthquakes.
Dr. Young seems to think that the recent attention being paid to earthquakes, primarily spurred by the flurry of quakes in the Irving area back in January, is probably due to better observation.
The perception of more seismic activity in the last 5 to 10 years may come from better instrumentation.
As has been the case here in South Texas, many around the Metroplex tried to blame the quakes on oil field fracking, something that Dr. Young supports.
When fracking came along, maybe people started to make the link that there were more earthquakes because of the fracking.
Dr. Young says that the connection between the two is certainly possible. Both North and South Texas have underlying fault zones, but due to the injection of water-based fracking fluid into the subsurface, these faults could be indeed re-energized.
To get a big earthquake, or to get any earthquake really, you need to have a fault that is what we call critically stressed. It could go, but it's kind of stuck. So if it gets a little bit of water along there, what the water does is just push the boundaries of the fault slightly apart, bang, it can go.
This graph from the United States Geological Survey, the USGS, certainly supports Dr. Young's theory. The frequency of earthquakes from 1970 to around 2004 inside the central U.S., which includes Texas, was constant, with quakes numbering around 700. With fracking technology being put into production within the last decade or so, from 2004 till 2015, the frequency has dramatically increased, and the number of quakes jumped to nearly 1,500, doubling in just the last decade. This information could support the theory that the actual number of quakes in most areas of the state are on the rise. But another question remains: could intensity also be on the increase? The quakes up in the Dallas area in January range up to about a 3.6 on the Richter scale, while the Beeville quake was only a 3.0. Even that was the strongest ever recorded in South Texas. Dr. Young says that the fault system in North Texas is actually part of an ancient mountain chain that begins as the Ouachita Mountains in the Ozarks, passing under the Metroplex and terminating out near El Paso, while the South Texas fault zones are not.
So that's an old, I guess, mountain belt that's now completely eroded away.
Dr. Young explains further that the fault systems associated with a mountain chain are inherently larger and more energetic than the faults in South Texas, which explains why their quakes are stronger. Despite the higher intensity quakes in North Texas, Dr. Young says that the entire state is very unlikely ever to see a large and damaging earthquake because it's located in the middle of a tectonic plate rather than on a boundary.
You're in the center of the plate, there's no movement. Right. It's just so you never ever, unless something crazy happens and a plate boundary suddenly develops in the middle of Texas, you will never get a big earthquake on those.
So if you're worried about the big one happening in Texas, you can rest easy. But Texans, of course, need to be aware that quakes are definitely occurring. So that leads us back to our original question: does fracking cause earthquakes? The answer seems to be not where they have never been before, but it may cause more of them. It will never, however, cause Texas to have the big one. Reporting for your hometown news, I'm Chief Meteorologist Bill Alexander.